All right, so my name is Viktor Radzyrsky, and I'm a distinguished engineer at Infineon Technologies. And the topic of this talk is using Bluetooth PAwR to control wBMS. And David already said what PAwR and wBMS stands for. He did half of the job. So let's do something else. So the agenda is very simple. The first we will talk about what periodic advertising with responses is. Then we will talk a little bit about what battery management system is about. And then we will get them all together and see how PAwR can be used with wBMS. So we'll start with PAwR. Before we go into that, we'll do a little bit of history here. So that all started with the advertisement that was a flagship feature of the Bluetooth Core 4.0 that introduced low energy. And LE advertisement was used to just broadcast some information and allow devices to connect. So advertising event, Bluetooth 2.4 gig is used by Bluetooth LE, and it is 40 channels, 2 megahertz apart, and 3 of these channels are used for advertising. The rest of the channels are used for the data or as a secondary advertising channel. So on the primary channel, advertising event means the transmission on channels 37, 38, and 39. It used to be just periodic transmission, and the advertiser will send 3 events, and the scanner can listen on one of these events and hopefully be able to receive. If not received, the scanner changes the scanning channel, and he will be able to listen. And as I said in the beginning, it was very simple, and it was just to advertise, this is my name, I want to connect, this is my appearance, I am a mouse, or whatever it is. Over primary channel, they still, sorry about that. All right. Over advertising channel, they still send the triplet. And that means the scanner could find it, but inside of the advertising packet, there is not too much information. Actually, the only information in the primary advertisements is the pointer to the data. And this pointer is the timing offset and the channel to which to listen to. So there are 37 data channels. So the primary will say, oh, go to channel 23 and get your data if you want to. All right, so that is extended advertisement. The next feature that was introduced in 5.0 was it points to a periodic broadcast stream. So the scanner will listen to the triplet, listen to aux broadcast, and find the sync. After that, the data comes periodically, meaning that after the scanner listen to the first aux sync indication, it doesn't need to go to the primary. It will start periodic listening, and it will be able to get all the information it needs. So that was good, and people used that. The only problem with that the advertiser had no idea if the peripherals or scanners received this information, and there were no ads. And that not to mention the situation when the scanners also want to send the data. And for that, in the Bluetooth 5.4, they introduce periodic advertising with responses. And as it said from the name of the feature, there are responses. So the feature extends the periodic broadcast. So it works pretty much the same. It's ADV, extended indication, triplet, and that points to the information, but inside of the aux ADV indication, it's a bit more information. So it needs to point to the packet to listen to sync to the broadcast, but in addition to that, it will say, oh, this is the periodic advertising intervals, but in addition to that, there are response slots, so there is number of response slots, the delay before the first update, and whatever other information needs to be can be used by the responder. So the colors here is light green is the broadcast by the advertiser, and the dark green is the responses. So during the broadcast, the advertiser can say, the first guy responds in the first slot, the second guy responds in the 20th slots, right? It can be up to 127 responses in the one sub. In addition to that, they introduced that you can have multiple sub-events within the same periodic advertising interval. For example, this one shows that there is an interval, like big interval, and inside of that there are 3 sub-events. So that can be used to increase the number of devices that supports. So actually PAwR allows 255 response slots and 128 sub-events. So that makes about 30,000 addressable devices. In addition to that, you can use sub-events for whatever you want. And if you will see further on in wBMS, we use sub-events for the specific things that we want to do. All right, so just to summarize PAwR features, there's first bidirectional connectionless communications. So there are no connection between devices, but you're allowed to send data from central to peripheral and from the peripheral to central. It is scalable. You can do 32,000 responders, and it is very efficient compared to the normal mesh. After you synchronize for the transmission, everything is synchronized. So you know exactly when to wake up, you know when to listen. You don't need to listen for extended amount of time. That makes it very efficient. And both central and peripheral knows when to wake, when to sleep, which is good. All right, so there is additional features that I didn't mention before, is that there is an option in the core to tell device, oh, you're in the synchronized state, let's do the connection. And again, from the connection, you can point the device, I will disconnect, but you start listening for the synchronization, synchronized stream. All right, and every responder has its own slot to transmit, so there is no contention, at least within this network. So you can have interference from outside, but not from your network, which is a good protocol. So one more feature that was introduced in the 5.4 is encrypted advertising data. And until 5.4, there was no way to encrypt the advertising data. So applications or OEMs need to define their own specification for encryption, which is usually not a good idea. So there is a standard which makes it interoperable. How it works? The standard advertising packets consists of LTVs. So therefore, there are set of LTVs that you can put in the advertising data, which is length, type, and data, and you can have multiple of them. For example, in standard early days advertising, you can put, this is my name, it will be one LTV, and this is my appearance, this is another LTV, and this is the services that I support. This is the different LTV. So encrypted advertising data say that, oh, let's do another LTV, which will be called encrypted data. And so this, obviously, the guy who doesn't know the key will not be able to decrypt the data, but the guy who knows the key, he can say, oh, this is encrypted data, I will use key, I will decrypt, and here you can find back the LTVs. So you can put multiple different amount of information in the encrypted advertising data. All right, let's go into the, now you know all about PAwR, right? So let's do very quickly about wireless battery management systems. So the electric car, the battery usually consists of the several modules, and typically it's 8 to 8, 16, 24. Anyway, so this is the cell module which monitors and can control several cells. So in the standard wired system, there is a power rail. You need to connect all the batteries together, so you need to do the power. But in addition to that, there is a control system. So wireless, the battery management system needs to be controlled. And the reason for that is that you need to collect the voltages for the cells, you need to know the temperatures, you need to receive alarms if something goes not correct. So it is all need to be managed. So there is a set of wires, and we can go to the next slide. So this is the block diagram of the standard of the wired battery management system, and there are wires that connect all the battery management ICs, BMICs, that you use for control. In the wireless battery management system, this is the good thing about Bluetooth, it cuts the wires for the last 25 years. And this is one of the set of wires that we can cut here. There is, all right, so this is battery management unit in the wired case, and in the wireless, it is split into two. So the battery management unit is the host MCU plus wireless central, as we call it. And on the BMIC side, it is cell monitoring units. It is split into wireless peripheral and the BMIC itself. And so the network is created between them, and we will talk later on how it is merged into PAwR. Right. Okay, so requirements for wireless battery management system. So we need to retrieve the battery measurements, like we call it state of health and state of charge. So there is voltages, temperature, current, that all needs to be controlled. There is a cell balancing, so there is some commands going from the BMU into the cells, BMIC itself, and obviously you need to perform diagnostics. So in the wireless, the requirements to wireless network that is created here, so it needs to support 30 nodes. Some people talk about 50, although I think it's too much, but it can, whatever car manufacturers want. So you need to maximize amount of the battery that's supported, so they can stick multiple cells under the same module. That means that there are more voltages that you need to send. There is a requirement for the latency. So there is what they call in the cars is fault tolerant time interval, FTTI, which sets the requirements how fast the information need to reach the central unit, right? So there are some brains in the car who would say that if I don't receive the measurement for the temperature from the cell modules within 1 second, I am stopping this car, right? So nobody wants that. In addition to standard car diagnostics, we need to provide wireless diagnostics. So there might be different conditions, it can be different RSSI levels. All this needs to be propagated to the car brains. So there is, you need to have very small startup. Again, it's from FTTI requirements. It never happens, but if the module crashes, if it restarts, it needs to restart within the same 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds, which is set by your by the car manufacturer, right? And that's an interesting thing, that people are asking to minimize power consumption. In all my experience with Bluetooth, where we do the devices with the running on the coin cell, everybody was joking that if we have a car battery, we will not have the problems like that. For some reason, we have a car battery, and they asked for the low power. It's amazing. All right, so that's application feature is we need to guarantee, we'll talk about security and safety a little bit later, but we need to make sure that somebody does not sneak unauthorized cell module into the network. So we need to provide security for the data exchange. Important requirements specific for wireless BMS. If you push on the acceleration pedal, the system, the voltages in your cells is changing very fast. So there is a requirement that you need to do the measurements at the same time, which is very simple to do when you're wired. When it is wireless, it's getting more complicated, right? So that's the synchronization thing. Network diagnostic, power savings, and secure over there firmware update. That's we'll talk about a bit later, but it's kind of obvious. If you don't want to allow somebody to update your cell modules with some bad software which can break everything. Very few words about security and safety of wireless battery management systems. So for automotive, there are standards, and it's very stringent requirements for the safety and security. So the system for the safety, the system-wide requirement is ASIL-D, which is the highest level specified in 26262. But interestingly enough, if your BMIC is ASIL-D and your host MCU is ASIL-D, between them, it doesn't matter. And they call it a black channel. Doesn't matter, it's hard to imagine, well, comprehend, I would say, but the requirement is that the host MCU receive fresh data, it received the fresh data with the required time, and it can validate data, it can validate the freshness of the data, and this is it. How it get from this ASIL-D part to this ASIL-D part doesn't matter. So we can use the black channel between the wireless central and the wireless peripheral. And thinking about that, if you have a UART, there is no requirements to UART. The UART is also the black channel, so wireless can be also black channel. So that works pretty well. For security, it's not that simple because you can break security in every component. So you are required to do full ISO 21434, and starting from the requirements, analysis, and TARA, and whatever goodies you are required to do. It's a big standard. Some defense system, again, I'm not going through the whole 21434 thing, but some defense systems that are in the wireless battery management system. So because this talk is sponsored by the Bluetooth SIG, I need to say that the best thing that you can do is use Bluetooth certified modules. This makes it already secure, right? You pass all the certification, you passed all the tests, and that makes it good. So you need confidentiality, integrity, authenticity. That's absolutely required. We need to do certificate-based provisioning to make sure that the correct modules are installed. And so there's key refresh. So for wireless battery management system, after the modules run in the car until the 75% of the lifespan, they can be reused. And you can take this module and use it in your garage. Well, you cannot, but people are doing that. Professionals, I guess. So when you get the cell modules that you were using in the car, you need to make sure that there is a procedure for decommissioning that you need to follow, and to get all the keys that were used by your system. They shouldn't be reused at your home. And the same applies for the trash can attack. If you replace module, that needs to be clear of all the security elements. Now that you know about wBMS and PAwR, let's see how they work together. So if you remember, there is a triplet, and so let's say that your cell module restarted. It never happens. It happens once in the factory, let's put it this way. So you listen to the triplet, you found the aux-ADV indication, and that points to your periodic advertising stream. And that goes from the periodic advertising interval. So well, actually we used two sub-events here, but you know that you need to wake up according to the algorithm. So you know the periodicity, you know the sub-event. So in the TX slot, this is the advertising channel. This is the going from the central to the peripherals. You can put several LTVs, as we saw in the encrypted advertising data, and that can be a broadcast data. Okay, so this packet is received by all the nodes. It's a broadcast, right? And then each of the nodes can reply. So that's perfectly matches into from wBMS into the PAwR. In the advertising, it is a control. You can tell control information. For example, you can say, measure the voltages or measure temperatures. And it is obviously a broadcast because you want to receive data from all the devices, right? And then, as I said, it's a bunch LTVs. So you can say, measure voltages, broadcast, and then unit number 5, please do the cell balancing. Right? So there is you can do broadcast and the special for each specific device, right? And the responses perfectly matches the scenario that you can send the battery data. So the more data you can squeeze here, the better it is for your system, because what we do is, and I guess can be different design, but what we do is in the primary sub-events, we collect the data. The central say, node number 1, reply and send me the battery data in the slot number 3, right? You can do different slots. And in the second sub-event, you can do retransmission. So if for some reason the central or your car brain didn't receive the transmission from slot number 3, the central can tell, number 3, please resend me information. And all this stuff happens periodically, so all the nodes will know that. So there is a data collection interval, right? So the device, all the devices will receive broadcast. They will know what to do, and then they will perform data collection, meaning that they will talk to their cells, get their modules, measure temperature, and as soon as the data is ready, they will transmit it out, right? And that happens every time retransmission, periodic advertising interval, all right? So, that's a robot mice. Okay, anyway. We're running out of time, so let's do very fast. So before PAwR, there was ACL. This is asynchronous connection, whatever. ACL is standard LE connection between the central and peripheral. So this table just shows the benefits of doing, of why PAwR is better than ACL. And I think the most important and the biggest benefit of using PAwR is that retransmission happens. It's requested by the application. In the ACL, it is a controller. So as soon as you told the controller, send this battery data, if there is some interference, if something is happening, the controller will be resending data. And you have the new data from your sensors, but you cannot send it because of the controller is trying to do something that you don't want the controller to do. And this is very good. So network startup for ACL, it's crazy slow. And they call it connection interval. So if your connection interval is 100 milliseconds, it will take you 500-600 milliseconds just to establish the connection. You need to start up, you need to exchange features, they exchange version, they send the masks, they set up encryption. It's crazy. For PAwR, it's extremely fast. You listen to the advertising event, you listen for aux-ADV indication, and you are there. You can send data right away. Right? So having said that, for the transmit power for the transmit power, if you have ACL, you can say each device to use different power, which is good. For PAwR, it will have the same power sent to all nodes. But usually in this metal box, it's not really important. And the same for the channel map. If you want to set up different AFH, you can also, in the ACL case, it is per connection. In PAwR case, you need to do one channel per all network. All right, the very fast, low power mode. When your car is parked, you don't need to collect this data, battery data, every 100 milliseconds or so, or every 20 milliseconds, as some manufacturers would want. So what you can do is you can do the same sub-event to transmit data, and then another sub-event for retransmission, and then you increase the periodic advertising interval. Right? So you need to change your network while the car is parked, but it's doable, and it's all working pretty well. Right? And I think the goal, that some manufacturers want you to use hundreds of microamps, below 1 milliamp for the network while the car is not running. And that's which makes perfect sense, because you go on vacation, you left your car on the parking lot, you don't want to. You want the car to start. Secondary wireless data, this is another requirement, because your central is a single point of failure. You don't want that. You can introduce the second wireless central. And for PAwR, it's interesting because secondary guy, if it knows all the keys, right, it can listen for the advertising from the primary. If it listens for advertising from the primary, it is synchronized to your network. That means that the secondary, in addition, it is synchronized by the transmission from primary, but it can also listen for all the advertisement from the cell modules. That means that it provides you the back duplicate information. So antennas are separate, so some data that hasn't been received by the primary can still be received by the secondary. So in the host MCU, you can collect data from both primary and secondary and make a smart decision which data is better. All right, and one last slide is over there firmware update. It also fits very nicely for the PAwR case. You use the TX slot to send the image chunks of your image, and you use response slot to acknowledge from the peripheral devices to the central that you receive this data and the data is good. Right, that's pretty much it. If you want to learn more, there is a web page here that you can have a look, and also the demo up and running, and it's in the Infineon booth right outside here. Right, that's, I think I made it on time.
Yeah.
All right.